And so the first order of business is to stop them from taking any uncontested ground right from the outset when it comes to what our system of government is and what our democracy is. Right? We know from other countries' experiences that quickly, I mean now, in the next few weeks, if not the next few days, they are going to start pushing to see how far the country is going to let them go without pushback, without protest. And part of this is because it's just psychologically advantageous for them to do this now, right? They're counting on the half the country that voted against them, the half the country that doesn't want to give up our system of government. They're counting on all those tens of millions of Americans to be despondent, to feel powerless, to check out, which, of course, would mean letting them do what they want, letting them run the table. What they really don't want is for the half the country that voted against them, the half the country that wants to keep our democracy. What they really don't want is for those tens of millions of Americans to wake up tomorrow feeling scrappy as hell, feeling, sure, regretful about the election outcome, but also, frankly, freed up from having to spend all of our time working on the election. So now we can work full time on being.
I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. The opening of this show, sort of reflecting words of wisdom from Rachel Maddow, the CNBC commentator. And we'll play more of that commentary momentarily. She talks about the 10 things we've got to do and got to do right now so that we reflect, demonstrate, build, act out the resistance that is required of us at this time. Well, today is Friday. This is the Healing Circle, and we're glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. We'll be talking about the elections. Two ideas. One is that we've been here before. And the second idea is that how do we handle the trauma of this week's experience at the ballot box? Where do we go from here? And we want your comments, your ideas, your thoughts. We want you to join the conversation and send your thoughts in the comment section. If you want to be on camera with us, send a note to Cooper@insightnews.com, and if possible, we'll send you a link and bring you into the conversation as well. I'm pleased in the program, the griot, and he and I have been talking, and one thing that comes up, two things that come up. One is to focus on what he and I will call the resistance. This is something we've been doing forever since our contact with European imperialism, colonialism, and beyond. And secondly, we want to, you know what? I think my battery is not connected. Hold on. There we go. Let me do a fix here. That's got my sound. I think that should be okay now. And let me check I think that's going to be better. Cooper, let me know if you hear me better now. So we begin the show though on Fridays, the Healing Circle, with a protocol, and I'm going to invite my colleague Dr. Bravada Garrett Arkansanya to join me right now and begin the protocol. Dr. B, how you doing? Now you're muted too. Just unmute.
Yeah, I said I'm all right, just dealing with the election like everybody else is. So okay. I'm glad to be here because it's another day to fight a battle, and we'll keep on it.
Bring in Dr. Oliver Williams as well, and Dr. Mahmoud Al-Qadi, so that we're all here for the opening of the show. Go ahead, Dr. B.
Okay, so I ask us to join in our ritual, our call that we have every day when we do Healing Circle.
Not working.
And yeah, I'm not hearing you, Dr. B, so you might need to refresh. Dr. Oliver, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, Dr. B, maybe you have to refresh. There, I see you moving now, so try it again.
Yep, I'll let me see if I can do that again.
We got you now. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Looks like we're having connectivity issues today, and I rebuke it like my grandma used to say. So what I'd like to do is join us again in circle, knowing that African people meet in circle. There's no beginning, no end, no top, no bottom. Everyone in the circle has equal access to the center, to where they have voice, the place of power. In this circle, we acknowledge our elders, because those are the shoulders we stand on. And we acknowledge our elders and our ancestors, because those were the shoulders our elders stood on. And we acknowledge our ancestors because they're closest to our Creator. In this sacred space, we also look for safety. So I ask us to look around to your left, around to your right. Check behind you and notice that you're in a space of safety. And just inhale peace and exhale anxiety, worry, anger, fear. And just do that a couple of times. Center ourselves into this moment, the present, where there's no point before or after the now. As each breath is a new now. One moment I was, right now, this moment I am. So with that said, we, in the circle, we also abide in an orderly fashion as African people do. We talk by using a virtual talking stick that is passed from one to another. And in this space, the stick can be asked for if the spirit so moves and you need the stick, just ask for it. And it will go around so each person has voice. And with that said, I welcome all of you, our viewers, our brothers, our sisters, in our united spirit today into the circle. And with that, we say Ashe, Ashe.
Ashe. Mm-hmm.
Ashe.
So here's a talking big
Thank you.
Baba Al.
Thank you, Dr. B. Well, let's jump right into it. We opened the show with a clip from Rachel Maddow. She has 10 things that we should do immediately. We'll come back to those over the course of the hour because, you know, the question we have to answer is how do we handle the trauma that we have experienced? But the other part is that we've been here before. And for that, I said, who do I call to talk to? I decided I called Dr. Mahmoud Al-Qadi, my elder. Dr. Mahmoud, good afternoon. And let me pass the talking stick to you because you bring a lens, a view, a long view that allows us to not be frazzled, not be fearful, but to be planful, proactive, and confident that victory is at hand. Dr. Mahmoud Al-Qadi, I'm passing the talking stick to you.
Thank you very much, Al. Good to see you again. Good to see all of you. Dr. Dago and Oliver. Why not we begin with where it began, with some historical context. Abraham Lincoln said at the height of the Civil War, "My fellow Americans, the fiery trial through which we passed will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation." His shadow or kindred spirit, in some sense, the incomparable Frederick Douglass. Here we are, and here we are likely to be. To imagine that we shall be eradicated is absurd and ridiculous. We can be changed, we can be modified, or even assimilated, but never extinguished. We therefore repeat that we are here, that this is our country too. And we shall neither die out, nor shall we be driven away, but we shall go with this people, either as a testimony against them or as an evidence in their favor. throughout their generation. We are a key people in a key country, always have been. We must keep in mind that our question, our struggle, is essentially moral and not political. It's
That's right.
political is reality. Everybody lives in politics. But morality is above politics. We are right and they are wrong from resisting our right to be free.
Mhm.
That's what this whole thing is about. If Black people are free, everybody in this country is free.
That's right.
That's the way it's been so far. Every victory about Black people has made people on the wings of society, the people on the margins of society, have gained freedom, became more free because of us. Count where you want to start. You want to start the Civil War? You can start in recent times in what we call 20th century history and the Civil Rights Movement. As bad as it is, more people are free now in terms of their rights because of the Black historical struggle, now in recent times called the Civil Rights Movement. But the Civil Rights Movement began when that first slave was dragged off the ship in Jamestown, scratching, biting, kicking, not to be a slave. That's the beginning. We're near the end of that now. This is the last straw for white supremacy. White people don't seem to realize this. White people don't know this, and must tell them that white supremacy, that doctrine, roughly 400 years old, 500 years old, that ideology, I'd even say that religion to which people owe their highest loyalty, is on the last chapter. We are going to win. We have to win if humanity is to win. Ours is a moral struggle. Don't forget that. It's political too, I'm saying, but that's not what drives us. What drives us is not just power to be had, but the right to live as free human beings with a beating heart and living affections right here in America, in spite of the world, in spite of Trump. We've met every challenge before us. It may not seem like it, but we are overcoming still. It looks bad, I know, but our slave ancestors taught us to never give up. You know, the bitterest hour of the night is that night, that hour just before dawn, right? One slave sang, just about the time I thought I was lost, my dungeon shook and my chains fell off. That's us. We're in the middle of it. And we're not going to lose. It's almost ordained that we shall be free, as both Lincoln and Douglas, and I might add even the racist and diminished in some ways that he was, Thomas Jefferson said these people shall and will be free someday. You can't, the timetable is not countable, but you've got to believe that. We're a believing people. This is not the end of the story. And Donald Trump and whatever he represents is the last bump of white supremacy, which is America's greatest affliction. White supremacy is America's greatest affliction. She is afflicted by it. That's what caused good people to do bad things, who are white, who call themselves white, who think they're white. I dare anybody to prove to me that they're white. Nobody can prove that they're white. Nobody, you ask a white person that, you're just lost. You don't know what he's talking about. So this is what I'm saying. It's just another challenge in the long struggle that we have to be, another hurdle. We have to overcome this. We have to always be optimistic, always believe in our slave ancestors and what they believed about their freedom. We must always believe. You can't do it if you don't believe it. End of discussion.
That's great. Let me bring Dr. B and Dr. Oliver in just for comments and reflections. Dr. Oliver, you first. Let's have you give your observations, your thoughts, your feelings as we monitor what has happened in the current political scenario.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Mahmoud. I needed to hear that. The other thing is that I've reflected on, I remember when the election was going on and we were going through this to try to figure out who was going to be the next president. And I said to myself, I said, I wonder what it felt like when during slavery and what the attitude of Black folk was during that time. And Frederick Douglass has always been a person that I would read to get a sense of experience, but also wisdom. And I said, but in our times, certainly, you know, I've gone through things and we dealt with racism growing up. And, you know, when I was a kid, I'd walk with my parents in the civil rights during the civil rights movement, and also in the city of Detroit when things were going on, and certainly integrating the high school that I integrated, dealing with the challenges of that. But with this Project 2025 and the racism of Trump, I remember noticing what happened in the 60s when we had the person from Alabama, Wallace, coming up with his foolishness. But I always felt like right would take over that and people wouldn't accept it. Now is 2024, and we're dealing with the foolishness of Trump and his ilk. And so I said, well, this is what it was like, when people were taking land from people that had been here. They didn't discover they were here, and they owned the land, but they didn't think that how could you own it? So and then I thought of young people who didn't have the experiences that I've had, young people who had gone through it but hadn't maybe thought so much about the ancestors and the slaves, and what we as a people went through, and how are they going to adjust? And then we do what we've done. There's reasons why we sang songs during times of struggle, or we had ways of dealing with things in the world, and we kept believing until it happened. And that's when you have to dig deep and start to I think get organized to fight it. And so I appreciated the words of Mahmoud and the things to help us remember, we've done this before. That's what you said, Al. and what we've done as a people. So that's what I've been thinking, I'm thinking, with people who've talked about this, that we have to start moving, and we have to start moving now to be able to challenge this foolishness and to deal with what Mahmoud said, help to challenge this ilk of uh, bad will and bad faith. It's the thing that's interesting to me is even in terms of people's faiths, that is something that, I mean, these racists feel as though God belongs to them and doesn't belong to the rest of us. And God belongs to all of us. And that's the fascinating thing about, listening to and reading the Bible. I knew that they were lying because the faith that they were talking about isn't connected to the faith that I know about. And so, and there was nothing about love in the discussion that was inclusive of everybody. So anyway, I'm hopeful, but I just want to figure out where I point myself and where we can get to work.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well,
Talking stick back to you all.
I like to get the talking stick because while we were sitting there, I thought about this quote that I often use because I do a lot of trauma work, in the clinic, the African American Child Wellness Institute, because, our mission is to promote the psychological and spiritual liberation of children of African descent and their families. And spiritually, one of the first things I think we do as an African people is we bear witness. We bear witness with our hearts, our drums, our tongues, our writings, our memories. There's a Yoruba proverb that says that the axe forgets what the tree remembers. The axe forgets what the tree remembers. And so I found this quote that I often use, and it's from what we psychologists have this thing called an encyclopedia of trauma. And in the book, on one of the first pages, it says we're bearing witness, and bearing witness implies having seen at close hand vital events to which one has a moral obligation to testify. Such events often involve life and death issues, openness to the life of another, and the need to take compassionate action on the other's behalf. Bearing witness, it informs, it testifies, it declares, and it vouches for truth. And it says that truth may be unpalatable. It may take courage to expose truth and do reflect on one's own character. So bearing witness may carry a sense of sacred mission. Something universal may be at stake.
I think connectivity issues again. Dr. Mahmoud, why don't you jump back in?
Bearing witness is a key statement.
Yep.
In our struggle. Always has been. Bearing witness. This is what makes our struggle a moral one, essentially. And we can't forget that. I know we live in a political world, but morality is transformative. It is not where politics is. It's above politics. We've always been that, trying to create a newer world, a more human world. That's our aim, not just for ourselves, but for everybody with a beating heart and living affections should have what we have, what we'll want to attain and get rid of this madness or this sickness which people who call themselves white are afflicted as if it were a disease. We know what they're doing is wrong. They know what they're doing is wrong, but they are afflicted. They can't get out of it, as my father, spiritual father, Jimmy Baldwin would say. You know, we're trapped in this situation. The world is not white. It's not black either.
That's right, brother.
The future of this world belongs to everyone.
There we go.
That future depends on to what extent and by what means we liberate ourselves from a vocabulary which cannot now bear the weight of reality. That's what's before us right now. All the good and evils, right? We can't miss it.
Yeah.
It's there.
Right.
Stevie Wonder can see this.
Right.
I mean, it's we have to confront it as our ancestors confronted slavery and all the evils. So black people have already endured every crime that could be committed against humanity. We've already endured and transformed it.
Right.
You know, we got to remember that. You know, we are not yet a free people, no matter how many people who are individually black and become Republicans and so forth. We can't, that's not the basic reality of black peoplehood. We're talking about a people, not individuals. Yeah. This is a social, moral question.
Yes, it
It has
is.
nothing to do fundamentally with individuals. Of course, individuals have talent and they may take advantage of their gifts and so forth. But human beings, black people know this, are essentially social animal. We're not. Individualism is another capitalist myth. You can't be literally an individual. Being human is a social construct. To be human is to be social. You can't live like birds and other animals by yourself. You leave mom at 2 weeks old or something. It takes a social environment to make a human being. And that's who we are. And that's what we're pushing for. We've always had push for. Our songs tell us that. I mean, over and over again. You know, look at if you really appreciated black music in the way I do, you know, I mean, you could see it in our music. We're like prophets in the Bible. Some of these people are prophets. Frederick Douglass was a prophetic voice that resounds to this day. So was Ida B. Wells, the prophetic voice who caused people to look at lynching. She's the first one to study black men, not just black men and why they're lynched, but black businessmen were disproportionately murdered during Reconstruction.
Right.
Her friend James Moss, a successful grocer, she cited him. She was the godmother of their children. And she pointed out the first book on lynching was done by Ida B. Wells. Then Booker T got into it. Tuskegee kept files on black people who were lynched. Then, and after the NAACP in 1909, they kept the records. So we know the records. Before Eli Ginsberg wrote 100 Years of Lynching, black people had already done that. That's who he borrowed it from. You know, 100 Years of Lynching. That's the popular book by Eli Ginsberg, you know, the scholar, so forth. Black people had already done the spade work. We know much more about America at the visceral level than 90% of They don't know anything
Right.
about the Constitution. Now, let me be crystal clear. They know at Harvard, they know at Yale, they know at Emory, they know in the West, the big school in the West, I'm talking about Berkeley, and all these elitist institutions, they have this information in their vaults. And I think one of the things will happen, they will be forced, not willingly, to release part of the story of Black people. They will be forced to release part of the story of the, end quote, righteous white people, decent, good white people. I'm talking about the abolitionists who people disappeared. I'm talking about, not just John Brown, but a whole host of people that you have to discover. The man who was the foundation of the Republican Party, founded the Liberty Party first. A rich white man in New York, whose name won't come to me right now, who chose Frederick Douglass as his running mate when he ran for president. He couldn't, of course, campaign in the South, but in the North and the West. That's the basis of the party we call the Republican Party. Is the Liberty Party. The last name of the man was Smith. He's pushed aside in history. But that's why the Republican Party was based. He was an abolitionist, which meant he was for abolishing the institution of slavery, not just against the spread of slavery to the West, which is what Lincoln was for. Lincoln was not an abolitionist. He was a part of, I hate to try to give a history lesson here, but sometimes we need this to remember, really bright people need to be told because they know the story, but it's not current in their minds. You got to know how the Republicans, why are we Republicans? Between 1870 and 1936, a Black Democrat was as scarce as a buffalo. You couldn't find them because there weren't any. They were Republican. My grandfather was a Republican, and you had a grandfather, he was too.
Yeah.
1936, the Depression and the failure of capitalism brought us into the Democratic wing with FDR's New Deal. We've been Republicans longer. Everybody's grandfather who's Black, and in my age group, was a Republican. It was commonplace. It was made sense. Why? Because the Republican Party posed as our friends. The great emancipator. All the great politicians that we elected in the 19th century during Reconstruction were Republicans. There wasn't a Democrat elected to public office as Black until 1936. And of course, one lasted until our modern times in Southside Chicago, the same seat that Obama went after. We wholesale went from Republican to Democrat. So that's why I said, to begin with, I'm not enamored of either of these parties. We got to stay moral. I'm not enamored of the Democrats or Republicans. As Malcolm X, they both have played us, has said, they made chumps out of both. I'm saying this. I know most Black people don't agree with me on this. I'm saying, and I respect your opinion. I hope you respect mine. But I'm enamored of either party. I'm not enamored of them because they both have made us chumps at different periods in history. Put the okie doke on us. And we know this. The brighter Black people know this. As I talked to somebody earlier today, while Republicans, because at one time Republicans supposedly in the body politic were our best friends. Most of the legislation up to this time, the Civil Rights Movement, passed in favor of black people were passed during Reconstruction by the Republicans. The Democrat Party was founded by slaveholders. I know you don't like this. Thomas Jefferson and his little buddy, fourth president of the United States. Who am I talking about? Not Hamilton. Who wrote the father of the Constitution? I'm having blankouts, but you know, those two men founded. It wasn't. What did you say?
Was it Benjamin Franklin?
No, Benjamin Franklin. That's the Godfather. Yes,
Yeah.
he was. Madison, James Madison, little skinny guy about my size. Little, and he was 6'2" buddy. They were tight. They founded the Democratic slaveholding parties.
Mm-hmm.
The Democratic Party was a slaveholding party. The Republican Party was the party of freedom in the 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
And we are loyal people because we behave that way. We were Republicans until from 1870, when black men were given the right to vote, not women at all, not even white women, until 1920. You know, all those years we were Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
There was a black man long after the Republicans had abandoned us, used to come to every convention. They made a kind of a side joke of this black man. He lasted until our time. He showed up at every convention, and he was Republican. Here's a man whom people and I'm endeared to him in some ways. What's the great writer in the last half of the 19th century who wrote Huckleberry Finn? Tell me his name.
Mark Twain.
Mark Twain.
Mm-hmm.
And he reminded us that there is no real criminal class in America except in the Congress. And they've both been Democrats and Republicans. And he could talk with that voice. Mark Twain was really honest about that. That's what we got to, we understand that. I mean, these are not the first crooks. What's his name? The guy who's the president now. What's his name?
Joe Biden.
Trump. Yeah, Trump.
Trump and Biden. Okay, Trump coming. Yeah. Yeah.
No, he's not the first gangster who's been in the presidency. You know, he's more blatant. He's crude. He has an underdeveloped mind, a scattered brain mind, and people around him know that. They're scared of him. This guy is Al Capone on steroids. He might do anything. And they're trying to surround him to contain him for getting in all of these things. But he is the most unfit man who's ever stepped into the presidency. And there have been, I want to make it crystal clear that all the presidents haven't been decent human beings. But he is the most indecent of all. Nobody. And people know it. Democrats know it and talk about it. And I have Al, you got to do another show where I can talk about the Democrats and their romance about democracy, which is largely an abstraction rather than a reality.
Let me do this, Brother Mahmoud. One, Cooper, pull up that Afrodescendientes. And as we're talking, we're writing in Insight News a multilingual section of the paper we call Afrodescendientes. We present a single story in several idioms. We present it in English and Spanish and Portuguese. We also present it in Yoruba, Swahili, in Somali. And the idea is that we show up in all these idioms in community and in the country and in the world. And this particular story, if we can make that bigger and scroll down to the second headline, but the image, we're going into Native American History Month, right? And last month Hispanic Month, Heritage Month. All of that an important discussion because all of it has to do with how Europe exercised the conquest of human beings in Africa and in the New World. And Cooper, if you scroll down on the page, I want to just show and share the headline of this story. This is part 3 in the series. Go back and get it. Keep scrolling down a little bit more. This headline talks about the requisto, or the requirement. And this says that the conquistadors were instructed. This is an article by Assistant Professor of History at Johns Hopkins University, Dr. Diego Javier Luis. And the headline story says, "Accept our king, our God, or else." And it talks about the senseless requirement. That statement was called the requirement Spanish colonizers used to justify their bloodshed in the Americas. So when they showed up talking to people who didn't speak their language and reading to them as if because they were assigned, they created a fiction that allowed them to say, this is, the knowledge of the moment. And we're reading to you and telling you, accept our king, our God, or else. That was the requirement. And when they refused to accept it, they proceeded with the annihilation, the murder. The resistance, however, was that some tried to say, oh, yeah, we'll do that if you guys leave in 3 days. Of course, this article goes on to say they didn't leave. They came back and they killed the indigenous people anyway and put them in bondage. We know the history of our people being brought from Africa to here. You can take that down. And so the question, Mahmoud, is the question of the flow and the ebb of history. You started off talking about we're at the end, we're at the final stages of this sickness, this affliction called white supremacy. We were looking at the beginning of it, at least the beginning application of it in this world, in that story. And you also mentioned the need for us to have discussion, to create narratives that examine, analyze, and critique what has happened. But equally, I believe we have to create narratives about today that reflect a future. We have to create stories, visions, plans, activities, relationships that bind us together, that show us being together, not being separated. What is happening right now, I fear, is the tendency for us to turn on each other. Black men are being looked at as the enemy by Black women for not supporting. Black women are being looked at in a certain way in some parts of the Black community, and maybe not, but the outside people are creating a narrative that says there's a division, a split between Black men and women. And then there's also narratives that say a split between the Hispanic, the Latino, the Asian people. All of us, though, victims of the same process. Divide and conquer the strategy. How do we both acknowledge and move beyond that? And Dr. B, let me ask you to respond first, because part of this is about trauma, the historical trauma and the trauma that we experience. I was listening to YouTube, so many Black women crying, tearful, angry, mad, and saying in many ways to white women, it's over. We're not going to trust you, expect you to do anything but be yourself. But we know what we have to do to be ourselves. Dr. B, what do we do? How do we move as a people, as a community, as a culture? How do we heal? And what is the outcome of the healing that we must do? Dr.
I hope I can have voice. Okay, I'll take the stick, but I'm frozen again, so I don't even know if you can hear me.
We can hear you. Just keep talking. Just keep talking.
Okay, it feels like the woman in the group. I've been shut up by the universe, and sometimes we have to shut up and listen. So I'm just trying to accept things as they be. But what I'm seeing is that there is a fear of erasure among white people that cannot be clearly articulated. That fear of erasure is I think fed.
Technology.
Yeah, we're losing your voice now as well.
Yeah, even in white children, this fear of being erased is being taught. Some of it consciously, some of it unconsciously. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
hear you. Mhm.
Okay, so
No.
what trauma is occurring is the trauma of not being, the trauma of a lost existence. And it supersedes race, gender, nationality, power structures, the idea of being erased. And so their fear is that if the numbers of people of color, especially us, the darker brothers and sisters, if we are larger than they are, they will be erased. So part of the defense mechanism is that they do these psychological, what I say, acrobatics of denial of problems. When I saw that these white women in suburbs were voting for Trump, I realized they don't even see their own existence, and they believe that hanging with a white man will assure their existence. I'm afraid that my Latino brothers and sisters, especially the males, that machismo piece, that idea that I have to hang with men or masculinity, I think that was being fed again by that fear of erasure.
Yeah.
People don't want to be erased. They don't want to be nothing. They don't want to be meaningless. They don't want their existence to be meaningless. But by doing exactly the opposite of what they're doing, they are erasing themselves and their relevancy. And that's the psychological component of it. That's the paradox of all of it, is that the more you clench, the less you can get. Because a clenched fist can never get anything more. So they're clenching onto their existence and denying the existence of others, because psychological when you hold on to that oppressive belief that only you matter and you erase everybody else, the question is, to whom do you matter now? There's nobody else for you to impress or to overcome or oppress.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah,
That feeling of erasure. And the psychological way to deal with it is to open up. That's the fear. Because if I open, I'm going to have to drop what I'm holding. And will something else come to me? And Black folks, we have been spiritually bred to have a moral identity. The reason we were born and raised and Eden was by the equator is because we are people who, no matter how little we got, we envision plenty. That's what we're dealing with.
You remind me a little bit of Frances Cress Welsing. Just a little bit there. She was on it. A lot of people disagree with her, but she was in that fight in a different way. It might have been some of the stuff was false. Some of us would say, that white people are a form of albinism, or albino. So, well, I don't put too much stock in that, but it's a position she was fighting from that matters. She wouldn't accept their definitions of the world. She had to fight some way, and we all are trapped in the racial paradigm.
That's right.
Nobody, Black people, white people, Hispanics, or whatever, Native Americans, all shades in between white and Black, are trapped by a doctrine which functions as a secular religion. And that is white supremacy.
That's
religion
right.
is a thing to which, whatever religion you're talking about, to which people owe their highest loyalty, not to men, but to something to supernatural. You know what I'm saying? Zoroastrianism and Buddhism and Judaism and Christianity and Islam and Baha'ism. There are 9 of them in the world called organized religions that people owe their highest loyalty to. In the United States of America, since it's a child of Europe and its explosion 400 years ago during the Renaissance, which created the white man and the Negro. You won't find these images in history before Chris got lost. You know, Chris, okay. That's when all this stuff came into being. You know, black Negroes, white men, Indians who didn't live in India. People are named for land, not for the color of their skin.
Yep.
All of that came into being in the last 400 years. This is an epoch in history. This governing right now, and it's crumbling. But white supremacy is a religion. It functions as a religion. This is what religion is what you believe in. You don't have to prove anything. That's what you believe in, you know?
Right.
And so I want to say this to Al. Thank you again, brother, over and over and again for insight. It helps us expand our understanding about Black people being scattered all over the world, all the languages we speak. It's all one story, the diaspora. We have to find one another in this scattering, and we are finding one another. Pan-Africanism, I said, is a part of the juice. You know, it keeps coming up, founded in 1900 by West Indians and African-American people in London. And it's still here. And that's it. Pan-Africanism is a thought pattern that all Africans who believe in freedom accept this doctrine to counteract this false God image imposed upon us because we were enslaved. They had to do what they had to. White people had to do what they had to do. You know, we have to do what we have to do. I want to say this before I know it's time. We're going to keep doing what you're doing, Al. I want to cite everybody, but one of the major things that I contend to that will free Black people in the midst of all of this is institution building.
Yep.
You're doing that. Eric Mahmoud is doing that. Sister T.D. Leal Kimber is doing that. You know, Black Ink is doing that. The young brother and sister in St. Paul and in the publishing thing. They're doing that. There are about 20 institutions that I can name which have been built since I been in this community 60 years ago. That's when I showed up. I'm talking about what happened since I've been here. I don't know everything. I read about 19th century Black history. I know that Du Bois visited us and all like that. And Booker T. Washington visited us. And St. Paul, Minneapolis is a very historic part of the Black experience that we're not aware of. But I'm saying institutions are not little pussyfoot organizations.
That's right.
They are enduring processes. You understand? It's the process, not the building that it's in.
Teach.
The building, the institution could be in a house, in a bank, in somebody's garage. It's the process. Yeah, a bank could be called an institution, but that's not why it is an institution. It's the process that takes place. Some of us are doing that, I claim, doing it quite well. So I'm saying, keep on doing what you're doing. Keep on doing insight. It's one of our oldest institutions, founded in 1909. All right. You hear. That's a part of the solution, is institution building. Because institutions make people behavior predictable. That's why we're controlled by white institutions. That's why you don't like me. You know, people like me. I don't like him. You know, well, because he's Black. You know, that's what. That's basically what else do I need not to like him for? You know, we all are gripped by this doctrine.
That's right.
Our fight is to help smash it, help the world smash people believing that they are God, that I'm in charge until Jesus gets back and all of that, that Jesus was a white guy from England or France or somewhere. We've got to challenge that. We got to have enough nerve to say that that's wrong.
That's right, brother.
What we call race is a biological, is a geographical thing. Not. We know that if you ask Mahmoud El-Qadi, what do you think Jesus Christ looked like? I think that Jesus Christ looked like a frizzy-haired, brown-eyed, broad-nosed, sunburnt Palestinian Jew.
Mhm.
That's what I think. That's what I think. Not a guy who painted Jesus. You know, his uncle. You know, he posed for Michelangelo, right? That's it. He did that. I might have done that. I might have painted my uncle in my community. That's what he did. But nobody can prove that Jesus Christ was what we call a white man. And I'll tell you something else. A white man can't prove that he's a white man.
That's
On
right.
that note, you know, yesterday I was listening to Roland Martin on the Black Network, and he had on Jane Elliott. Jane Elliott is famous for the brown
Yeah.
eyes versus blue eyes
Free white.
experiment. In what she said, what you just said, there is no such thing as a white person, nor is there a black person. These are both fictions created. That
I agree.
the reality is that all of us on the planet are shades of brown. Shades of brown. I got a little bit of a clip. Why don't you play that if you can, Cooper? Maybe a minute of this. That's the name of the book she wrote, Shades of Brown, the unofficial, the official biography of Jane Elliott. It's about her, I guess, and her work. Check it out. But we got some information, I think. Is there a story, a clip we can play?
By author Todd M. Mealy. This is the book right here. And when I was introduced to her, Jane held up, she's got my book, White Fear, there as well. So there you go. So, Jay, let's just jump right in.
Let's
You
do about a
saw what
minute of
happened on
this.
Tuesday. Break
She
it
did.
down. What do you think?
What happened on Tuesday is the citizens of the United States of America decided to listen to a racist, sexist, crafty crook who has no business being in the presidency of the United States of America. We know that, but you see, right now we're in a situation where people who are pale, stale, and male are scared to death. And it's, you know, I read the book White Fear a long time ago when it first came out. And I've watched this thing happen over the last 30 years, particularly the last 20 years. I've watched white males become increasingly frightened of the fact that they are going to lose their numerical majority in the United States of America. And the damn fools don't even realize that they have always been in the numerical minority worldwide. Only 15 to 18% of the human population of the earth is classified as white. And let's make no mistake about this. White is a misnomer. There are no white people. I am not the color of this collar on my shirt. And you are not the color of the OTE on your shirt. We aren't white and we aren't black. We are all shades of brown. And it's time for us to realize that. And it's time for us to enjoy that fact. And it's time for us to stop talking about race. There's only one race of people on the face of the earth, and that's the human race. And oh my God, how long is it going to take us to have social studies teachers tell our students at the junior high and high school level that the word race, meaning a specific group of people, came out of France in 1580? How long is it going to take us to realize that the idea of whiteness and blackness, yeah, quit laughing, this ain't funny, don't do something else.
Let's stop there. And if you would, Cooper, go back to the little bit of the Rachel Maddow. We'll go over a couple of minutes here, but Rachel Maddow again, because we started off talking about things we got to do right now. We can't wait until the Trump machine unfolds. That she is saying, Rachel is saying, that they are going to do all they can to see how far they can go until we push back. She's suggesting we need to be planful, intentional, and push back now. This is the resistance. Can you play that where you left off, Cooper?
The side to anyone who now intends to try to turn this country into some tin pot tyranny. What they want least of all is to realize that half the country went to bed sad tonight, but then woke up tomorrow fired up with a new sense of purpose, knowing that apparently this is what we're on this earth to do as American citizens in this generation. because history did not just end. Time did not just stop. We just got marching orders from the universe and the Electoral College that as of today, American citizens who do want to hold on to democracy, we know exactly what we're going to be spending the next days and weeks and likely years of our life working on. And the strategic first moves come into focus quickly when you think about what other countries have shown us about how hard it is to regain democratic ground once an authoritarian leader has taken that ground. And the work has to be done now. The work that has to be done now, it has to happen in sort of every aspect, every corner of our society. The U.S. military needs to give the American people binding assurances that they will not deploy U.S. military force against the civilian population in this country. They can give those assurances, and now they should. The free press needs to give the people of this country assurances that they will not become state TV, that they will stand and fight together. They will put aside rivalries and petty professional differences. They will stand and fight together as the free press, as the fourth estate, as an institution that is a pillar of our democracy, as these guys on the other side inevitably start picking off individual journalists, individual publishers, individual news organizations to try ultimately to turn us all into some American accented version of RT. Mm-hmm. If the Democratic Party takes the House, expect Article 1 of the Constitution to come under attack. By which I mean expect efforts to hollow out the power of Congress, to make Congress a just-for-show institution, right? There's a reason actions of the Russian Duma never make news, right? Expect efforts to attack Article 1, to make it a just-for-show institution that has had its real powers taken over by the executive, by the dear leader. We are going to need a plan and some steel spine inserts among elected officials in Washington to head that off. We're going to need the whole country to recognize that risk in advance, to call it what it is when they try it, and to actively resist it. Depending on whether the courts can provide a check on this administration, expect Article 3 of the Constitution to come under attack as well. It is already a fetish and a laugh line on the right to brag about how court orders really mean nothing and physical force and violence is what ultimately really decides what's allowed. Well, we have to decide if that laugh line from them is going to become our reality or whether we're going to resist that. We need a plan and some steel spine inserts among members of the judiciary to head that off. We're going to need the whole country to recognize that risk in advance. We're going to need every lawyer in the country to recognize it as their calling to fight it. We're going to need to call it what it is when it inevitably happens, and we're going to have to actively resist it. And then there's civil society. Is there a more boring term in the world that doesn't include the word committee or budget? No, there isn't. Civil society, though, is kind of where the rest of us are at, right? Civil society is one of the things that I think of as soft food for authoritarians. They often don't even have to bite that hard to crush it. All the organizations, membership groups, advocacy groups, professional associations, every voluntary group of every kind in the country, everything in organized American life and culture that is not business and not the government either, that is civil society. And authoritarians need to crush that because it's not about them. Strongmen leaders have a tendency to become not just leaders of the government, not just dictators, but totalitarians, because they can't have anything going on in the country that isn't about them or for them.
Let's stop it there, Cooper. Whoa.
She's on time.
Whoa.
One of my favorite, and she's one of the more insightful minds on television. She's absolutely right. She's saying what I've been trying to say in a nutshell. Let's go to work. But some of us keep doing what you're doing. You're on the right track. It needs to be expanded. You got to build institutions to protect our children. That's what institutions make your behavior predictable. That's why so many of us see Black people through white eyes because of we've been institutionalized with whiteness. That's just a fact. You know what I mean? I remember not too many years ago when Black people, Black as me, objected to me calling them Black.
Hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? And these were intelligent people. I'm not talking. One of them had 2 degrees from the University of Minnesota, had an anthropology degree, and got mad at me for saying I'm black. The person about my color. And he said, "You told me this." Now I agree with some of the stuff you say, but as for this black shit, don't be calling me that.
Mm.
You look like that was, a little while ago, 30, 40 years ago, where black people have grown up. I'm proud to witness that. I'm so glad I lived in the time that I lived to see white supremacy pimp slapped by black people. Boom. One time. Yeah. Yes, they did. When you started calling yourself black, pimp slapped them. When you started growing your frizzy hair, when you started arranging the way you see the world through your eyes, when you start dealing with black and proud, black is beautiful. All of these beautiful black people come from nowhere, just overnight. Change your mind. I lived long enough to see this. In 1960, just like I was referring to this individual that I knew, if you call a black person black, he'd slap your face. In 1970, if you didn't call him black, he'd slap your face. That's remarkable. That's a transition in the black mind against white definitions. We won that battle. I don't know anybody today. I don't personally. You might know some people who call themselves Negroes. I don't know anybody. You might know some.
I don't.
I don't know anybody. That's remarkable. And we ought to take note of that. Slap, pimp slap, white supremacy. It's almost up there with the Haitian Revolution.
Yep.
Pimps that defined yourself. And look at the beautiful hairdos coming out of black people. Oh, just all over the thing. God, that's aesthetic. Rebirthing itself in African themes. This is a beautiful thing. White people didn't decide that. We made them call us black.
Yeah.
You don't call it Negro Entertainment Network. You call it what? Black Entertainment Network. Before that. Yeah. Well, we're still here. We still have the gift. We want a free world where people will not be judged by the color of their skin, as they say, or by the content of their character. Dr. King, he's right. He's absolutely right. We all have beating hearts and living affections, and those living affections and beating hearts belong to all human beings. And we got to attack this thing about race. It's false. It hasn't been in the world no more than 400 years. There were no Negroes before the Atlantic slave trade. There were no white people before the Atlantic slave trade. Read the history of white people by, help me, history of white people.
Oh, Nell Painter.
Nell Painter, please do. She's a marvelous job of tracing the very history of white people. White people don't know who they are. They really don't. And we have to challenge that. What does Caucasian mean? Most white people don't know where that word came from. Most, you ask them, you ask a scholar, he may know. But in the generality, that's why they don't use the word that much. They don't know what it means. And nobody can prove that there's white, as James Baldwin has taught me. Nobody would dare try to prove that. What are you talking about, you white? When did you become white? What does white mean? It means power and so forth. We know that, associated with skin color. But this is a relatively new idea that has ruled the world, much of the world. Let me put it this way. It hasn't ruled Chinese, but I'm saying, but much of the world.
Brother Mahmoud, let me move us on because we're
Thank you.
at the close of the program. I wanted to ask Dr. Oliver and then Dr. B to give final and closing comments. Dr. Oliver?
When we were talking about the idea that people want to make a connection to whiteness. And although it's an interesting thing seen with, I think, some of our politicians that are Latino, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio in particular, among others. But I think also there's some Black politicians that are moving towards that as well. And to me, even when I've seen it with students who have a schism in terms of their identity and how they see other Black people as being a challenge to them. Some people overcome it, some people don't. The question that I wonder is, as a group of Black folks, we had to start with knowing oneself first. And then how do we collectively move from there? How do we reclaim and reconnect with things that we've built historically? And how do we move forward? And how do we make connections with other people who are like-minded? So Sonia's Puerto Rican, and I see a lot of, I was recently in the Dominican Republic, and then when I went to a couple of times I've been to Africa, there's an identity associated with that, and being connected with who you are. And it's the things that Mahmoud talked about, I think resonate for me with those things. But as a community, how do we continue to build on that? And so that's what I want to say, and get connected with some of the things that Rachel Maddow made comment about.
Dr. B, take us out if you would.
I can't speak. Do you hear me?
We hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Your video is frozen, but we hear you perfectly.
Oh, that is so good, because I wrote that I've been frozen most of the program, so I didn't even know if you could hear me. But I hope that we still hold on to hope, no matter what happens. Like Aretha Franklin says in her song, "Don't let nobody take away our faith, our spirit of overcoming." Let's agree as people of Black people in the diaspora, as African people on this planet. Let's agree to keep our hope. Let's keep our hope, because as long as we have breath, every sense, every moment, every second, that's what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Every second that what, Pravada?
Your voice went in and out, so we want to make sure the
I
point
said,
made.
all I wanted to say on the end is let's hold on to hope.
All right.
And let's not let anybody, even us, steal it from us.
That says it all. Listen, sisters, brothers, elders, thank you so much. What a great conversation, and one that we simply must continue, expand, and grow. Thanks to those who've joined us on the social media platforms. Take this conversation and share it. Like it, share it, and create conversations like this all over your network. We'll see you next time. I'm Al McFarlane.
Keep on doing what you're doing, Al.
Thank you, Brother Mahmoud. Thank you. Take care. And you too, Doc.
And you too, Baba El Kati. I have nothing but delight wherever you show up. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. We'll see you next time.
Okay. Bye.